Hey there, it's Carla from marielazo.com, and I want to talk a little bit today about that witch bottle that was recently discovered at a Civil War era battle site. So, uh, last month in January 2020, an announcement had gone out from the William and Mary College in Williamsburg, Virginia, that a witch bottle had been found near the Battle of Williamsburg. And I was so excited when I heard this story. I was like, where did it come from? How did it get there? And it took me on a whole bunch of historical, research rabbit holes. And I want to talk about that today. But the main thing that I discovered is that witch bottle is actually a hoodoo spell bottle that was left behind by runaway slaves. So let me tell you what happened. It was the Virginia Department of Transportation. They were getting ready to widen their interstate. And before they did all of that serious work, they decided to call upon the archaeological team at the William and Mary College. They have a research team, and they basically had an agreement that anytime there was going to be any work done, they would call in the archaeological team to do a dig and discover, what was going on in that area, way back when. So that was really cool. So they found this bottle, and it was an artifact. It was a bottle. It was a clear blue bottle. The top, the neck was broken a little bit. But aside from that, it was all intact, and there were these nails inside of it that had corroded into a ball. And a couple of the research team members thought that this is a witch bottle. So that was kind of the story that they were telling. So I was like, I really need to know more about this. So the research I did turned up a couple of different things. So one of the things was that a witch bottle was really popular in the 1600s. There was a huge anti-witchcraft sentiment going on. So people who were afraid of witches, they would create these witch bottles to protect themselves from witchcraft. So the idea was that a homeowner would take a bottle, they'd fill it with sharp objects like nails, pins, needles, sharp glass, but they'd also add urine and hair. Now, the idea behind this was that, let's say it's around Halloween, when the witches come out. The idea was that they would take this bottle and stick it under their hearth somewhere. And if a witch was around, or a witch was going to send evil spirits to their home, the evil spirit would get confused by that spiritual DNA, that urine, that hair, and they'd get trapped inside the bottle and avoid the people in the home. So that's really what a witch bottle was back in the 1600s. That was that use. That was considered what they call white magic. And so this bottle was found from around the 1860s. That's when the Civil War happened, and it's in the States, because when they found those witch bottles, only about 200 had been found, and mostly in Great Britain. There weren't that many found in the United States. So when they find this one in the 1800s, I realized the difference between a witch bottle and a hoodoo spell bottle, because the traditions are different and the reasons they use them are different. So I did some research to find out who actually built these forts. So this was the Battle of Williamsburg, and there was like a series of 14 fortifications or forts that had been created to protect the Confederate Army to protect them from the Union Army approaching and getting to Richmond, Virginia, which was not only the capital of Virginia, but also the capital of the Confederacy. So this is a really important placement. So when I did the research, I found out that it was actually African American slaves who built these entrenchments. Now, if you know anything about the Civil War, it was about slavery. No matter what people tell you, they said, oh, it's about states' rights. Well, it was about states' rights to have slaves. So to be a slave meant that you didn't have any freedom, and it was a very oppressive place to be, and that happened for over 400 years. So a hoodoo spell bottle was used as magical resistance. So when I learned that there were all of these enslaved African Americans and also free blacks who had been pulled from whatever else they were doing to build these forts, I really had to dig a little deeper on the historical context of this. So when I say that free blacks were also called, that means if you were a free black person, you also got the order to work on these forts, and you did not have a choice. And therefore, if you tried to resist, you would also be subject to whippings. And that was the norm. That was a common punishment for African Americans, for enslaved Africans as well. So when I did the research, I realized that this placement was actually a really significant battle in the Civil War. Now, what ended up happening was the forts ended up being occupied by the Union. Like, actually not all of them. So say there's 14 forts that had been built, but say several of them actually became occupied by the Union. And the reason why is because you had all of these enslaved Africans who were, building these forts against their will. Many of them were able to escape behind Union lines and gain their freedom, because the North was not happy about seeing slaves build these forts, to be used against them. So so the North gave the slaves their freedom. So the other thing is the enslaved Africans also gave the Union information. So when the Union armies thought that there were like lots more people showing up, or lots more troops, the enslaved Africans are like, well, you know what? That's not really true. They don't have as many troops as you think. Not only that, these particular forts are not even occupied. So the Union troops were able to take this information and proceed, to go towards Richmond, and that's actually what started the Battle of Williamsburg. It was due in great part because of the contributions of these enslaved African Americans. So I want to show you what a hoodoo spell bottle looks like. So I got this from eBay. This is a bottle. And this is a soda bottle. The one that was found was a lot bigger, but the neck here had been broken. And because of that, they couldn't test it for a chemical makeup. So then my friend Tom Hunt, he is a historic blacksmith. He gave me some, what are these? These are like Civil War era nails. By the way, there was an ironworks close to Williamsburg called the Tredegar Ironworks, and they employed hundreds of enslaved Africans and free blacks. So that's how I also know that these black people had access to nails. So they take the nails and they put them in the bottle. And then they put urine in it. No, this isn't urine. It's turmeric juice, but I wanted to give you the visual. So they would pour, or however they got the urine in there. Let's see, they'd put, there we go. Yeah, that's a good amount. They would put the urine with the nails, like so, stop it up with a cork like this. And they would take their intentions of sabotaging their masters, and they took this bottle and they put it under, they put it where they knew the Union people would be. So they wanted to, they put it where their Confederate masters were going to be, because they wanted to give, the slaves wanted to give the advantage to the Confederate, to the Union Army. I know it's like the South was the Confederacy, the North was the Union. There were so many slaves in the South, and they were under the thumb of the Confederacy. So when the slaves were creating these hoodoo spell bottles, it was magical resistance against their Confederate captors. So what they did was they created this spell bottle. Well, not this one, but they created something like it. and they buried it where they knew that their Confederate captors were going to be in order to sabotage them, in order to curse them. And that is basically what happened. Now, the history shows when the questions are asked, like, well, who won that particular battle of the Battle of Williamsburg? They say, did the North win? Did the South win? And people will say, well, it was it was inconclusive. We can't really say either way. But if you ask me, it was the enslaved African Americans who won, because when this battle happened, over 12,000 slaves escaped to the North, and they gained their freedom. And also, they were also sharing intelligence, military information with the Union. So they were saying, you can go to these forts because no one's there. You think that all of these thousands of people, thousands of troops are there. They're not. So all of these African American slaves gained their freedom because they decided to resist. And they resisted by any means necessary. Running away is one form of resistance, but hoodoo is another. So that is just, I just want to share how there's so many different ways to resist. There's so many ways to hex the patriarchy, as we say. So I just wanted to just share a little bit of history on how slavery became, like, it gave the roots, it gave the inspiration for the hoodoo magical tradition. It came out of need, it came out of desperation, it came from being oppressed. That's where the magic of hoodoo gets its power, and that is why it's an African American tradition, because of the history from where it came. So that is my story for today. If you have any questions, I would love to hear about it below in this video or anywhere else you plan to see it. I am Carla from Marie Lazo, and I hope you have a magical day.